A hot day for May in Ashburn, but we got to watch some football. It's always a good day. Got the mobile podcast studio back up and running. What a world. Let's have a podcast. Three, two. What up, everybody? It's Beltway Football. Brought to you by Oarsman Automotive of Virginia. We ride with them. Want you to do the same thing. Check them out. 7 locations all over Northern Virginia, from Alexandria to Chantilly, back and forth, all over the place. They got anything you need, including big man. I got to get used to you in this Acadia. Like, I, I mean, for so long I was used to you in the Honda, right? Like that pilot you drove,
Yeah,
kind of forever.
purple
That
Honda Pilot. Yeah.
And then I got used to you in your little sports car era, the 300ZX era. That I don't know that I'm ready for Acadia Mitch yet, but I need to get my head wrapped around it.
I'm starting to get a little used to it. I love the car. I just had a good talk with Bob actually on my drive home from Ashburn, and JP, we're gonna get a little golf together with the Oarsman boys and the Pod boys, and make an afternoon of it at some point this summer. But yeah, I love that Acadia. It's so nice. It was so easy to get. Everything was smooth from start to finish in the
Good looking.
process. Snip snap. It was easy, and all of a sudden, I went from tiny little sports car to giant SUV.
Snip, snap. I'm in my truck. Obviously, another Oarsman Automotive purchase. All right. It's not losing its luster. We come out here and we want to talk about 100 things, and we all just watch Jayden Daniels throw. Um, Dan Quinn, it seemed fairly intentional that before practice, when Quinn talked, he said, don't read anything into the depth chart in May. This is about maximum reps. And then Mariota got most of the first team reps today, or what would be, at least he was out there first in drills. And it was a lot of 7-on-7 today. They had refs there, so they didn't have like the simultaneous pairs of 7-on-7. Um, you know, it was interesting to see more of Mariota, who had a couple nice throws. I thought Jayden in 7-on-7 was really good. I thought both quarterbacks, when they did 7-on-7 in the goal line, it kind of bogged down. And as much as a defense, when you're playing full field 7-on-7, the defense has all the disadvantages. When you get into first and goal from the 7 and there's no threat of the run game and it's 7-on-7, then the defense has all the advantages almost. We saw a little bit of kind of the Fugazi stuff you get when a 7-on-7 play just goes way too long. You know what I mean? It's like, all right, dude, this play would be dead. But all in all, I thought it was good spirited practice. A lot to take from. I thought like kind of we got to talk to John Allen and Bobby Wagner and some of these guys we hadn't heard from in a while. Mariota too. I almost think there's more to take away from the audio post practice than necessarily the practice. I have a bunch of notes. I don't know if you have any like big picture item from practice. One thing that stood out to me as we talk about the new staff and the new vibes and everything, they're running 7-on-7 goal line, and Dan Quinn's like at the line of scrimmage, like almost replicating like a center, which you did not see from Ron. And even like when they're doing like their warm-up drills, the coaching staff, like the tight end coach, Tavita Pritchard, Kingsbury, like everybody's so involved and active. Like it just seems like a beehive almost. There's people swarming around all the time.
Yeah, I mean that opening bags drill they do, which we've talked about a couple times now, and anyone on Twitter or whatever can go look at it. That starts the practice. I mean, you see all of the coaches are in the middle, almost like third base, coaches kind of, getting those guys moving and going. What stood out to me today was it wasn't quite as crisp of a practice as it was last week when they were out in the rain. And I think part of it was what's that?
Balls were on the ground today.
Balls were on the ground today. They weren't on the ground much last week. But I think you saw, they were getting into some situational stuff. And so I liked kind of the work at the goal line. I love the fact that Jayden struggled a little at the goal line and had to go a little off schedule when it comes to, running these 7-on-7 drills. But that's real life. Like that's going to happen on Sundays during the season. But more so, I like that they opened the practice. They did a full special teams period where they worked on kickoff and kick return. And I think you get a feeling for, who some of the guys are that they're looking at in these different roles. We saw Emmanuel Forbes returning punts, doing different things. And I loved what I
There's
heard.
no way you let Forbes return punts. Like,
No, but what I liked hearing from
there's
Dan
no
Quinn
way.
about it,
Yeah,
listen, not his role,
right.
but we asked Dan Quinn about it before practice. And what I liked was he talked about, hey, like, this is the time of year to figure out if guys have some special abilities. So we're going to try these guys in different positions and see if we can, uncover some hidden gem of a talent that maybe we didn't know one of these guys had. And then, to 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 follow up on what you were saying, I like that these rookies aren't being anointed anything. They're second, third, and fourth stringers, and clearly Dan Quinn is going to make these guys earn their roles. And it's maybe when we get to training camp and you want a guy like Jayden taking all those first reps, we'll get to that point. But now in t-shirts and shorts in May 22nd at 3:36 p.m. for timestamp guy, I got it right, I believe, for once. I like the fact that they're making these guys, earn it.
Yeah, I think that's fair, dude. Who do you think? Who's the most established quarterback in football? Mahomes, obviously.
Yeah.
I bet Mahomes in May OTAs kind of splits work. This this is not practice. You know what I mean? Like you want everybody to get involved here. Is kind of my thought. Like maybe Mahomes, and I bet I don't even know who the backup is in KC, but I bet that dude is getting more work than you'd expect this time of year. It's a different time.
And listen, it was 85 degrees out there, and the pace of practice didn't
It was
change.
hot.
It was hot. It was humid, and those guys were moving and sweating their tails off. We were sweating our tails off just watching, and those guys were moving. There weren't breaks. There weren't slowdowns during practice. It was one drill to the next to the next. Again, just these are things that you establish now in May, so you don't have to reestablish them. You set the standard now, and you don't have to deal with it again when you get to real practices with real consequences.
There were slowdowns when we were interviewing players. So man, that was not a crisp pace when we were doing the interviews. And you tell me, fair or foul on this. I feel like it's pretty standard when you are standing outside and butt hot that you can like pull up the back of your t-shirt to kind of expose your back to like if there's any breeze or anything. That's definitely my move anyway. And in turn, like your drawers do show, but it's like the top of my drawers. It's not like anything risque. I've done that forever. So you've seen me do it forever.
Yeah.
Am I the only person that does that, or is that I think that's pretty common?
I don't have an issue with it because I just really don't care that much. But I could see, we gave a former reporter who's now in New Orleans a hard time for the fact that we had to see his. Let me finish.
Say his name.
Okay. Matt Paris, a hard time that we could see. It wasn't that we could see his underwear; it's that we could see full butt crack, which was a problem.
We saw his actual butt crack.
Yeah.
He's not fat.
A male lower back shouldn't be a female lower back shouldn't be a problem. That you should be able to air those things out.
You're getting all twisted up here talking lower backs. Guess who said something
to you and tell you that it's okay.
Guess who said something to me?
Ben Standing.
Were you standing there, or is that really just your guess?
Oh, that was just my guess.
Now, it wasn't like, hey, that's inappropriate. It was like, hey, man, your back's showing. And I was like, yeah, I know, it's hot. I'm trying to catch some fresh air, dude. All right, you know what? You can tweet me if you think that's. I swear people do that. I think that is a known way of cooling off. I'm not talking about like my theories in Richmond about cooling off that were, a little more advanced. I'm talking about lower back. You popped a little t-shirt up, you wave it a little bit.
However, I have
a bunch of notes.
Real quick, your cooling thing in Richmond, while it was different, certainly exposed your lower back as well. So that was the lower back's been out for a while. Out and loving every minute.
My cooling technique in Richmond works though. Shout out to Mike, the security guy, saying what's up. Um, I know you have a steel trap mind. I decided to write a lot of things down. Are you cool with just running through notes?
Yeah.
All right.
You want me to start?
Dan Quinn makes a point. Uh, sure.
No, I mean, go ahead. I was going to start.
I
I
feel
think
like
we're starting, so go for it.
I think our connection's a little choppy, so I apologize if we're choppy. Um, Quinn made a point of saying don't count on anything for the depth chart, but then I did notice Emmanuel Forbes was running with what looked like the ones. And there was a play that just seemed so endemic to Forbes where it was Mariota and there's good coverage. And the play probably in real life, he's either pressured, has to throw it away, but in 7-on-7, it just kind of keeps going, right? And Mariota rolls right, rolls right, rolls right. De'Ami Brown was well covered by Forbes, and then eventually just makes a play and comes back to the end zone. And Forbes probably wasn't quite quick enough when De'Ami decided to cut back, but like it's a good ball, good catch. But Forbes is right there, and like the ball skills we all heard about, like get a hand on that thing and get a PBU. And it just was like that close to a good play by the defensive back that I feel like could use one, and instead it's a touchdown the other way.
Yeah, I mean, we already mentioned there were more balls on the ground than we saw last week. But there were fewer interceptions today than we saw last week as well. So I guess you kind of take the good with the bad. And Mariota had the majority of the interceptions last week. I was going to bring up Frankie Luvu at linebacker is just such a difference in athleticism and maybe football knowledge / understanding from what we've seen the past couple of years at that position. You just see him so smoothly go from taking a deep drop to cover a tight end who's running a seam route or whatever, and again 7-on-7, but to stepping up and making a play on a quarterback who's kind of rushing out of the pocket. And there's one play where Mariota kind of stood in the pocket for a while, and Luvu maybe got about 10-20 yards of depth with a tight end who's on a seam route. Mariota kind of tucked it and spun out to his left and ran for what would have been a gain of 1 or 2, but Luvu was right there and in a game would have gotten a big hit on a quarterback. And just kind of the speed and fluidity with which he plays that position is noticeable at this point in camp.
Yeah, I agree with that. That exact play in my head, I'm like, all right, that QB is either going out of bounds or sliding or something because you're getting your block knocked off. Couple Daniels things. He took this. I wonder if the team has posted it to Instagram or Twitter. So everybody understands, like, we're allowed to take videos up until a certain point, and then they shut us down because the media is not allowed to know strategy or share strategy, but their own social channels can share it. Daniels hit this deep shot down the right sideline, right where we were all standing, to Jahan Dotson. That was just beautiful. It was truly just a beautiful ball. And Dotson had to like really fingertip it to bring it in. And as he was running back, Terry was like, man, when it's all hands, you got it. And I think that was like an encouragement after a year where Dotson had some tough drops, I'd say, last season. It was just a beautiful pass. And when that gets on the internet, it's going to go ballistic. Two other Daniels things I wanted to point out. He hit probably like an intermediate out to Zach Ertz. That is a serious pro throw.
Yep.
Down the left side. I'm guessing now, granted, it's 7-on-7, but it looked like it was 12 personnel. So, like, theoretically, Ertz would have been left hash or over. And the ball was an absolute rocket. And it has to be if you're throwing high and outside like that. Like, NFL corners can beat you all damn day if that ball's not right. It was a rocket, and it was high and outside where ideally only your guy can go get it. And Zach Ertz, for the injuries, the age, whatever you want to say, he went up and got it. And it was a pretty damn impressive play. And then the last one's just like,
let me just interrupt there.
Yeah.
That catch, and the guys are excited about the play as they're coming back. Ertz runs directly over to Ben Sennett, and you see the two of them, motioning, hand motion, discussing that play. And that's the kind of stuff that you love to see from the veterans. And Zach Ertz has talked about it, that he goes out and makes a big play himself, which is, obviously important for him, and his stats and all those sorts of things. But he also goes over and he's working with the young kids. I imagine talking with them about how to use your body to make sure that if the throw isn't perfect up and away, how you can kind of shield off a DB. And I love seeing those kinds of things at this point in in camp or in the season. It's nice to see everyone's not just in a learning state; these guys are also in a teaching state as well, where they can.
Um, I lost you when you were saying a learning state, but also a teaching state.
That's where I stopped it. So just pick it up from there.
Okay. I think you nailed that, and I think Dan Quinn has talked about how he wants guys teaching to teaching. I think Bobby Wagner kind of talked about that, and I think that's what should be going on right now. The other thing with Daniels, you can't help but notice. Now, this did not happen in the kind of first and goal 7-on-7 sessions because I think there's a lot less real estate. But when Daniels is running that 7-on-7, that ball comes out fast. And there's times where you can tell he has identified something defensively, and they're running different coverages. It's not like they're just sitting back there doing the same thing every snap. And there are times when he identifies something pre-snap and the ball just comes out. And I was standing with Logan Paulson, and I was just like, damn, that comes out fast. He's like, I know, man. Like, there are little things that he does every practice that just make you think, like, oh, this might be the dude. The rest of my kind of random. I'm gonna bail on my video, Mitch. Maybe I guess I need to leave it up if we want to try to post this. Has it been okay?
Yeah, you've been fine.
All right, we'll leave it up.
There's a little bit of a delay between the two of us talking, but I think the listeners are going to be okay with it. It's not bad. I was going to go, obviously offensive line stuff. I had a good chat with Cornelius Lucas after practice. After this pod, we're going to have a lot of sound for you. We're going to have Dan Quinn. We're going to have Bobby Wagner. Should we have Marcus Mariota as well? And then also,
I thought Mariota and
Allen too. We got a lot of sound to process for you guys. Cornelius Lucas was taking the first reps at left tackle, and we know that, with the way that Quinn is doing with working with the rookies. But Brandon Coleman got a lot of work today, and if last week he was running with the 3s or 4s or whatever group it was, kind of the extra reps at the end of each drill, today he was running solidly with the 2s. And again, they're in shorts and t-shirts, so there's only so much you can take away from it. But they were doing a drill where they had 2 linemen. I tweeted a video of it. They had 2 linemen on the left and the right with bags. And Coleman started in the middle. The old lineman would start in the middle. Shuffle to your right, get a block. Shuffle to your left, get a block. Shuffle to your right, back and forth. And what stood out to me, and part of it is on the guys who were working the bags with him, but he would with a lot of the other linemen, they would kind of get over to the blocking point on the right or the left at the same time that the guy with the bags would get there. So it'd kind of be shuffle, shuffle, hit, shuffle, shuffle, hit, shuffle, shuffle, hit. When Brandon Coleman was out there, he was shuffling over and he had to wait for the bags to get to him. And you could hear Bobby Johnson yelling at the guys with the bags to hurry their bleeps up so that it wasn't the tackle sitting there waiting for the bags to get to him to deliver a hit. And I think it shows just, again, his athleticism and his quickness is, that much more than I think what we see from the rest of the tackles that are really in camp.
Yeah, I think that's what, the organization thought when they picked him, and the athletic scores back it up. And hell, when we talk to the TCU line coach, kind of backs it up. We're not going to know much till we see. I mean, that's got to be 5 days into camp before we see anything, but it'll be exciting. I did write this down. I was curious your take on it. When they were running 7-on-7,
this is my next note.
When they were running 7-on-7, they had the O-line. So the O-line often kind of stands around in that period or like pretends to kind of do something. I'm not going to call those gassers, but they had those guys running pretty good. How did you feel about that as an O-lineman, first like real hot day of the year, watching those boys?
I, as an ex-O lineman, hate gassers, which I'm sure you can imagine. But what I like about it is when they go to the end of practice, the 7-on-7 stuff, when, as you said, the O line would typically be sitting around, they go and they run gassers. That's also their period to lift inside the building. And so they get their lifts in while practice is finishing up with with the skilled position guys, and then they can go straight into meetings, and that weight room doesn't get clogged up very much. But the note I was going to make about it was they ran the gassers. The guys went in to get their lift in. They kept Ricky Stromberg and Mason Brooks out on the field. And what I like to see is that they have Stromberg running pretty much solely at center. They have Brooks working pretty much solely at left guard. And I like the fact that, Stromberg is going to get those reps at that center position, because at the end of the day, Michael Dieter might have a little more experience. It might be a more experienced kind of backup center / guard or whatever. But I think Stromberg has a higher ceiling, big picture. And so I like the fact that it seems like they're taking a lot of the guard responsibilities off of his plate and letting him concentrate on becoming an NFL center, which is kind of who he's been as a player since college started.
I know we have a ton of audio. I just have a couple other things I wanted to talk about. Um, Brandon McManus, new kicker. They ran some live kicking stuff, as live as you're going to get in May, but pretty live, and definitely a few clangs, and like loud clangs, like dang. I'm not making anything of that in May, but it was hard not to notice because the noise was so loud.
Well, when they were running the goal line drills, you had McManus and Ott and Tress set up about 20 yards behind the goal line, I guess, into the field. So the guys would run. So they'd run a goal line play. McManus would get an extra kick in. They'd run a goal line play. McManus would get an extra kick in. And like you said, there were a number of pretty loud doinks. And he was kicking. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe he was kicking at the full goalposts, not the skinny ones that a lot of kickers work on in practice.
Right. The other couple things I have here, Whiteside he's a guy that just makes plays. Doesn't take whatever you want from that, but I would say the bottom of the DB room is hardly settled. Quan Martin seems to be getting all the reps with the ones at safety. Yo, my man, and left hand up. This kind of just started because the name is funny, but Yankoff just keeps catching the ball. Like Yankoff seems to be where quarterbacks want him to be, and he was doing it again today. And like this offense is going to have, I think they're going to run a lot of 2 tight end sets. I think they're going to have some, like obviously Sennett is a guy they want to be H-back, tight end, whatever, fullback. But Yankoff is a prime practice squad guy that can do that stuff too. I just find it interesting.
To that point,
my last one is, go ahead.
To that point, real quick on the tight ends, I just think that Amani Rodgers is such an intriguing piece to what this offense may be. That Dan Quinn and Cliff Kingsbury want these hard-nosed guys who will stick their head in and block and do all those things. Amani Rodgers is not that player. He's more of a wide receiver at tight end. I kind of think in this day and age in the NFL, you need a tight end who's more wide receiver than blocking tight end. And I think that he can fill a pretty specific role for this offense. I hope obviously he's able to stay healthy coming back from the Achilles. I think we talked about this on the last pod. I just think it's going to be super intriguing to see how this whole thing plays out as they move towards training camp and then to the final 53, because he is a UDFA. He is a guy that these guys that this coaching staff didn't bring in, didn't point out. But I do think that he can fill a role that can help this team. So let's put a pin in that one and keep an eye out in the coming weeks / months.
I think that's a good pin. I did notice he's big, strong, athletic. Watching him today, he seemed a hair slower or not as explosive as maybe we saw before the injury, which is probably fairly normal, especially less than a year removed from it. But my last note, and this is not particularly scientific, big man, but
I'm aware.
I don't know if it was a shallow crosser that just made it the whole way across the field. I don't know what kind of the route was, but Jeremy Chin was in coverage on the far side from where we were and had to cover the whole way over.
Yeah.
And I don't remember who the wideout was, but I noticed he was step for step. He was in good position. And he ended up, I don't know if you and I were standing together there or not, but he ended up like kind of coming right at me. That dude is a freaking unit, dude. He is big for that running ability.
I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it was Luke McCaffrey on the crosser.
It sounds about right. It was a white dude.
Well, that narrows it down to a couple of those receivers.
Right.
But yeah, listen, I think that big picture as we look at this team and where we're at, I just think the coaching is so much more direct. I think the players are better, and I think the coaching is so much more direct and helpful. And there was one quote from the Cornelius Lucas interview that kind of stood out to me. I asked him kind of, you know, how is this group different than the previous group? And the one thing he said is we're getting intentional direct coaching. And, we like that because it's something that we can, hang our hat on, and we know kind of what's expected of us. And I know at the end of last year, talked to a couple guys, off the record, just discussing their feelings and thoughts about the coaching staff and the changes and everything that's happened. And a lot of the talk was about them getting kind of mixed messages. Juan Castillo would step in and, want a certain technique or a certain, blocking period or blocking agenda. And then Travell Wharton would come in and say something that was different. And the playbook would say a third thing. And they just kind of felt like they were a little bit lost. And as you look at,
we would get mixed messages
from
from
the
the
coaching
staff
staff.
to media during the week.
Right.
Like,
So I think the combination of better football play, of more accomplished football players, as well as the coaching being a stronger piece of it, is going to be the catalyst to the change that obviously we know that we need to see. And that's how you take talking about a linebacker into the O-line.
I think that was well said, and I think it's the perfect segue to all these guys today. Like, we got to talk to Bobby Wagner, who's going to go to the Hall of Fame, about why he came here and how he wants to change things. And John Allen on another rebuild that he seems to have bought into. Marcus Mariota, who there are some fair questions about his commitment level to being a backup. Doesn't seem like that's an issue at all. Let's take it away. You want to go to Wags?
Yeah, let's go to Dan Quinn first, and then we'll do Wagner. Let's hold one of these guys for the next pod. Pick one that we should
hold your one-on-one, or you want to hold John Allen, and we could kind of talk about that more direct.
Yeah, let's hold John Allen for the next pod. So it'll be you're gonna hear Dan Quinn, Bobby Wagner, Marcus Mariota. Enjoy it. And
can I have like one brief kind of media specific complaint?
Sure, I like media specific complaints.
So I've been here since like 9:30 this morning. Anybody that listens to the radio program is aware that I messed up and didn't have my power cable. So I was here for an hour and not even on the air. Eventually that got resolved. Thank you to Jason Bishop. But I have a live hit at 4:30. We've been done out here since like 2:15, 2:30. And that's okay. No big deal. But we've been set up for this live hit since, I don't know, 3:30. And now it looks like it's about to pour, and we have to hustle and run into the bubble. But luckily the bubble just opened. So, bubblicious.
I mean, that's I
thought you appreciate that.
I do. I feel bad for you for it, but I will say in about 20, 30 minutes or so, I'm going to turn on channel 4, and I can't wait to hear your report from Ashburn and Commanders OTAs.
My man. I care more for Derek than I do for me, because he had to break down a whole live shot and then set up another one. But let's go. Here comes Dan Quinn.